My name is Suzette van Haaren. I'm a PhD student at the University of Groningen and the University of St. Andrews, and I'm also one of the organizers of this expert meeting. I'm due to hand in my PhD dissertation in a few weeks, so I hope you can all understand that I really didn't have the time to prepare a video essay for today, so what I'll be doing today is more off the cuff. This video comes to you in two parts. First, I'll tell you something about my PhD research and what I've been doing these last 4 years. And then I'll explain a little bit about a little photography experiment I did with the Bury Bible. And the Bury Bible is a manuscript that is in the Parker Library at Corpus Christi College in Cambridge. The title of my PhD dissertation is The Digital Medieval Manuscript Approaches to Digital Codicology. And you may notice that this is the same title as the expert meeting. And this is no coincidence. I believe the digital medieval manuscript is a very complex and dynamic object, and you can look at it from various different perspectives. And I'm hoping that this expert meeting will really bring that to life as well. So I'll tell you a little bit about what I'm thinking about the digital medieval manuscript and how I've kind of described that in my PhD dissertation. In my PhD research, I take a distinct materialist perspective and I look at medieval manuscripts and their digital counterparts. So my dissertation consists of 3 case studies, each of which is one manuscript and their digital counterpart, and sometimes even multiple digital counterparts. In looking at these objects, I take a distinct digital codicological point of view. And with digital codicology, I do not mean using digital means to practice codicology, but what I mean to say is that I use terms and ideas that come from codicology in thinking about digital objects. So these are ideas about materiality, about histories, about making, using, and keeping. One of my case studies is the Bury Bible. This is a 12th century giant Romanesque Bible, and it is kept in the Parker Library, as I said earlier. In this chapter, I look at processes of making and creating the digital object, kind of how this relates to technology and to the people that make it, but also how the medieval manuscript is presented in digital space affects how we perceive the manuscript and kind of what we do with it. That immediately brings us to part 2 of this video, which is about this little photography experiment that I did with the Bury Bible. So I was writing up my chapter about the Bury Bible during lockdowns, and I thought it might be interesting to kind of visually show the arguments that I was making about the importance of photography in the way that we see the medieval manuscript in digital space. So I call this little experiment the Bury Bible in a different light. And the idea is actually very simple. What I wanted to show in these photographs was how our view of the manuscript page would change in different lighting. So changing the position of the lighting and using different props, for example. So this experiment has been a long time coming. The Parker Library wasn't allowing people in for quite a while, but eventually on a sunny afternoon, me and Scott Maloney, who is a photographer at the Cambridge University Library, were able to go and do a little experiment. It was really fun, so I'll show you some of what we filmed that day. Here you can see some of the results of the photos that we took that day. The photos that you're seeing here show the photos that we took while we were gradually lowering down the lights in angle. And the effect that that creates is basically a more kind of dramatic shadow and light effect. So if you have the light at a 45-degree angle, you get quite a flat page. And then if you go downwards, and the more downwards you go up until raking light, you can see that raking light really creates these quite dramatic shadows that really show the buckling of the page. In these images, you can maybe see the results a little bit clearer. You can really see here we have the 45-degree angle photograph, and then over here is the kind of middle angle, and then here we have full raking light, in which you can really see how the lighting gradually changes how we see the manuscript page. And I must admit that both me and Scott actually hoped for a little bit more dramatic results. But unfortunately that didn't happen that day, and I'm sure the photographers who are in the audience will already know why. This was because we were sitting next to a really big window, and we were unable to darken that window. If we would have been in a completely dark room in a photography studio, for example, we would have seen a little bit more dramatic buckling of the parchment. But unfortunately that didn't happen. So we were in a reading room, and we had to make do with the space that we had. But that also really goes to show that when you're in a reading room, you're also seeing the manuscript in different kinds of lights. So when the light streaks in from a window, you see the manuscript differently than when it's a darker or more cloudy day. So the colors and the gold always look different or in different environments. And this is also the case when manuscripts are photographed. So what I'm really trying to say here is that photographs are taken by people who put up lights. They are never objective views of a manuscript. They adhere to specific rules and adhere to specific making processes, and that makes them actually quite a subjective view of the medieval manuscripts. This photo shows how the manuscript was lying in the reading room, and it goes to show how kind of the streaking of the light from the window really affected how we were seeing and also how we were photographing the manuscript. So we had turned off the lights in the reading room, and this is also without the lights that we were using for photographing. So you can see how the kind of natural light streaks in, and how that affects how we are seeing the gold, how we're seeing the colors, and kind of from these types of images we can ask questions about how manuscripts are mediated, not only in digital space, but how they are mediated in all kinds of spaces. So gold has a really interesting quality to it, especially when it comes to photography, because of its reflective nature. So here in these images we tried something different. We used a white paper sheet, cut a hole in it so that the lens of the camera could go through it, and with changing the positioning of the paper sheet, you can see how the light reflects differently on the parchment page and on the gold, and how that creates a different view of the page that we're looking at. Again, I've put the images next to one another, so it might be a little bit clearer for you. Here you can really see how the gold reflects light differently with the changing position of the sheet. And again, this is much less dramatic than we'd hoped, this window was really the bane of our existence that day. But yeah, this is what the results are, and actually you can see pretty nicely how the gold reflects differently with this different position. I've explained what we did for this little experiment, kind of what the outcomes were and how we conducted it. And even though the results are a little bit less spectacular than we'd hoped, it really goes to show that the way these digital images are created really affects the way that we see the medieval manuscript in digital space. And this really has to do with kind of the people who are creating it, the technology that we're dealing with, but also kind of the rules and regulations that come with creating digital objects. But I want to stress that this is not necessarily unique to the digital objects. The way that we perceive and see medieval manuscript changes with all kinds of stuff. It changes with institutions and environments, it changes with the reading room, it changes with light. What this experiment also goes to show is that when we're looking at the digital medieval manuscript, we should pay more attention to the creative processes that are behind making these digital objects. And that also includes looking at the people and the labor that goes into making digital medieval manuscripts. It took us about 15 to 20 minutes to take all the photographs that we wanted, but setting up the equipment, rigging the camera, putting up the lights, it took us quite a lot longer. I'm not entirely sure how to conclude this video. There's no real conclusion to it. We did this experiment, it was really fun, we got to show a few things. I guess what I'm really trying to say is I would like to encourage more play in the way that we're looking at manuscripts and at digital objects. I think it's a really broad and interesting topic. The expert meeting, the videos that we're seeing during the expert meeting includes things like roles and videos touching, exhibiting, even medieval memes. So medieval manuscripts are cultural objects that are full of life. They are dynamic and they are moving, and so are their digital counterparts. The digital medieval manuscript is a distinct object that is worthy of study. It contains multitudes referring not only to its parchment counterpart, but also to the world around it. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'm really looking forward to the discussions that we're going to have during the expert meeting. As I said, I'm due to hand in my dissertation very soon, and I'll be looking to do something else after that. So if you're interested in my research or what I've been looking at, please don't hesitate to contact me.